Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and in this episode we will finally button up that radiator. Alright guys, well in the last episode there were lots of comments about the functionality of my radiator outlets for the, or should I say the heater outlets to go into the cabin, and I actually agree with a lot of you guys that I didn't think it through thoroughly. I was thinking the flow of water would be enough to sort of follow the angle of the tube, but because the inlet and outlet are in the same path, there will be a little bit of a Venturi effect from sort of the return to sort of get the water flowing in the right direction, but probably not enough to make it flow very well. So I'm going to, first of all, before I do anything else, have another look at that. Okay, so the other thing I'm going to have a look at while I'm here is I've been rethinking the layout of the radiator overflow system and the heater core and the whole lot all together and how they all work in with each other. And what I've decided, what I've come up with is, I sort of knew it before I built this whole overflow system, that I don't really need this expansion tank. The radiator is fine because it is higher than the highest point of the engine. This is the highest point of the system. It's only generally necessary to have this sort of tank if you have an engine that sits higher than the radiator, because then you need to be able to bleed it somehow. You need sort of, the cap should be up at the highest point. So I don't really need this, and looking at the engine bay, the rest of the engine bay is going to be all nice and neat and tidy, and have this sort of thing sitting in the middle there that's not necessary. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the radiator cap off of here and swap it onto the radiator, and that means that I'll just cap off this outlet for the time being, and the bottom inlet, the return from this, is actually where I'm going to run my radiator. Now it is still on the hot side of the radiator. It would be better on the cold side of the radiator, but the plumbing is already there. It's going from -6 out into the heater core, and it'll come back through into -10, which is a bit bigger. So hopefully that creates enough of a low pressure outlet system so that the water will flow well through the heater core, and it should do the job. So first things first, let's disassemble everything and start looking at blocking off some pipes. I am definitely getting much happier with my TIG welding. Clean is definitely king when it comes to the TIG. I've made a nice patch on there. Doesn't look too ugly. It's going to be hidden underneath that plenum anyway, but that looks quite nice. And now it's time to start changing up this radiator. Radiator cap is back on the radiator, and that's all looking good. Now I know it is frustrating that I keep going backwards and forwards and changing things on this, but I have never done any engine conversion before, so this is all a learning curve for me. And as much as I think ahead on how to do things, things pop up. Once I actually start trying to fit things in the engine bay, nothing happens, plans change. Okay, so I've got my new mounts ready to go on the side of the radiator, and I've been meaning to make one of these for a while. I've just quickly welded this up, and it's not even square, which I'm quite annoyed about, but that's how inconsequential it really is. This thing, weird contraption, is actually known as a third hand. Quite handy for welding, and I haven't had one, and it's about time I did. So basically how this thing works is I can sit it on the bench like that and stick the tip of it on top of my little peg, and it holds it in place while I weld it. So I got, you know, two hands to do what I need to, and this is holding it just with the weight of it. So handy little tool, good little tip. Okay, let's start welding these pegs onto the radiator. All right, now I'm going to just weld in my captive nuts in for the mounts for the radiator. I really like these little flange nuts. It makes it nice and easy to make a captive nut by drilling a hole that's just big enough so that the flange sits on the outside, and then I can just weld around it. Saves me from sort of getting from the back. In this case, I can't get into the back of this panel, so this just helps me hold it in place, weld it up, nice and easy. Okay, so we have our radiator all hooked up. Down the bottom there, down there, you can see that is the electric water pump coming up through, going into the engine. This is returned from the engine back through into the top of the radiator. The radiator cap now has an overflow that goes down and comes up into this recovery system. And the next thing I need to have a look at is the heater system. All right, so I showed you last episode where the heater comes into the car, and this is the factory heater box. So it's a bit of a complicated shape that goes up underneath the dash, up under here. So I want to reuse the bulk of it. The issue I have is that it is currently too tall and will not fit past my bolt-in tunnel. That's not the end of the world though, because this comes apart in half, and this top half, this is where the heater core itself is, which I'm going to reuse. What I can't reuse is the fan portion at the bottom. So I might be able to actually knock the fan off and use another fan from something else to push the air through the heater core and pump it around the cabin. So if anyone knows of a good fan from another model that would be sort of sit aside and I can just pipe it up, let me know in the comments. That's the heater. Let's go down and have a look at the other systems in the car. We've covered most of the systems on this engine now. So we have the cooling system, we have the oiling system. Now we need to have the electrical system, or the charging part of that electrical system, and that's where we come to the alternator. Now, this is the factory Ferrari alternator, which actually sat down on this side of the engine down where I now have my electric water pump. And also it's really big, and it would require a lot of modification and fabrication to get it to fit back where it was going to go. And there's so much stuff on this side of the engine as it is, it's going to be much easier to run a slightly smaller alternator down on this side. Now this is something I got out of a wreck. It's actually out of a Toyota Camry. It's a similar Denso part, same manufacturer. It's just physically a little bit smaller, and any smaller is good. It should still provide plenty of power for what I need for this old car without electric windows and half of the functions that the Ferrari would have had. So I think that should do the job nicely. So now it's a matter of trying to make it fit into my very, very, very limited space. It's not the easiest thing to see, but basically I'm going to be sticking it in about here on the engine, which means I'm going to have to make a bit of clearance on this triangulated support for the subframe and the front end. I'm going to have to reinforce this and move this little corner of it to give myself some more space. And I need to make enough clearance so I can adjust and tension the belt with the alternator itself. So let's start making up a bit of a mounting plate and see if I can work out a way to actually mount this to the engine itself. All right, so I've cut my plate out, and I never really seem to have much success with the plasma cutter. Yeah, I don't know whether it's I've tried it without using this standoff tip, but it doesn't work very well. It needs a standoff tip, but it's starting to get balled up and gummed up, and I think, yeah, it's much neater but slower doing with a grinder, and I think I might just stick to that from now on. So what I've done is I've gone back and I've measured the spacings of the holes, and it's nice, even rectangular 4 holes that are there. That was the mounting point for I think it was the air conditioning compressor that was on that side. So it's nice and flat, and the good thing about that surface is perfectly perpendicular to the crank pulley. So if I can mount on that, it gives me a straight surface to mount my alternator to, so that the pulley is all in line and nice and square. So let's start measuring and drilling. All right, so I've made my plate, and I'm happy that it fits. It sits nice and square to the engine, which is what I need, so that I can get my pulley lined up with the crank pulley. So this needs to be perfectly level in line with the crank pulley, and square and straight and all the rest of it. So the way I've worked out the distance is I got myself a straight edge and ran it across the face of the crank pulley. I measured the distance from the straight edge across the crank pulley to this inner hole, which I know is 145 millimeters. And then I've measured with a straight edge across the face of this pulley to the inside of this hole is 110 millimeters. So I know that I need my mounts to start at 35 millimeters from the center of this hole. I hope that makes some sense, but in any case, it's time to now start working out how I'm going to put my hinge mounts for the alternator onto this plate. And this is what I'm going to be using to make my pivot point. So when I bought my lathe, I got a whole bunch of stock with it, and this is a nice bit of big hexagonal stock that you could make bolts or something out of. I think that's going to be perfect for what I need, so I'm going to cut off a section of this that eventually is going to be about 40 millimeters wide to sit inside there, that we can use as a pivot for our alternator. All right, so I just surfaced the face of my piece, and I've drilled a hole through the center of it. That's the initial hole. I need to make an 11 mil hole through the middle of it. The issue is that the chuck that I have for the lathe can only take up to a 10 mil drill bit. So I'm gonna have to put the 11 mil drill bit in the lathe, turn down the end of it so I can hold it in the chuck, so then I can then use it in the piece. At least the lathe is here. It's an option that I have. All right, and that is the mounting piece I made up on the lathe. So I had to put a big taper on this end so that it would actually clear in the alternator. So basically it fits in a nice tight fit, and it needs to clear this angled section here. So that all fits nicely, and if I put a 11 mil drill bit in to hold it in place, And when I mount it on the mounting plate, it's going to sit on there something like that, and the alternator is going to be able to pivot on that axis. And on that note, that was a lot of trying to work out exactly how I'm going to fit things in and what I'm going to do. There was lots of time off camera spent doing that. So that is where I'm going to have to leave it today. I am out of time. The working on the lathe takes a fair bit of time, and it's quite fiddly, but I'm enjoying learning a new skill, and definitely nice being able to have this new machine in the workshop that I can actually sort of build things like that. So in any case, that is all the time I have for today. So that means it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hey guys, at the Frankfurt Motor Show in 2003, Alfa revealed its concept for its new supercar, the 8C Competizione. When the car was announced it was going into production, Alfa Romeo received over 1,400 orders. However, when it finally went on sale in 2007, only 500 Competiziones and 500 8C Spiders were produced. The cars were a carbon fibre body shell fitted to a steel chassis, and final assembly took place in the Maserati factory in Modena. The engine is a Ferrari Maserati derived 4.7 litre cross-plane crank V8, making 450 horsepower, and it's based on the same architecture as this. The 7600 RPM engine comes with a 6-speed transaxle flappy paddle gearbox. It also comes with Brembo carbon ceramic brakes and can do 0 to 100k an hour in 4.2 seconds. The Spider was released a year after the Coupe, and it was significantly more expensive, coming in at around 200,000 euros or about 300,000 US dollars.
All right, well, that was another episode of me redoing everything again.
In true Jeff style.
Yeah, I mean, I know I spent all that time building that expansion tank, and like I said, I sort of knew it halfway through, but I thought I'll just keep running with it because I was enjoying building it. I actually enjoyed learning and sort of doing some of this fabrication stuff. So it wasn't completely a waste of time. But yeah, now I've redone it. I'm pretty sure that is the way the radiator can stay now. That should be good. So we can actually, hopefully next week, get that alternator fixed, and we should be almost done with this, the basic systems to run the engine.
Woohoo! Famous last words.
Yeah.
Please like and subscribe if you're enjoying the show. So tongue twisted after my 6-speed transaxle. And please thank you to all our patrons who are...
they help out a lot, yep. And you get to watch the videos a day early, ad-free.
And I think that's it.
Okay. We'll see you next week.
Have a good day. Goodbye.
See you guys.
Car. They only made 1,500 orders. However,
no.
The cars were... Can you stop doing that? It's super irritating. Took place in the Maserati factory in Modena. Oh, because that makes a massive difference, skipping the and. That just streamlines it.
Yeah.
Easy. 470 horse... What the hell? It's mated to a happy paddle. The 76 RPM... Oh my God. 7600 RPM engine. The 76 RPM... It also comes with Bimbo... Bimbo what?
Bimbo brakes.
No, I just missed the R.
You said Bimbo.
I said Bimbo. My accent. Speed transaxle flappy gearbox paddle. God, getting really tired now.